Hi, and welcome to another episode of In the Spotlight, where we shine a light on entrepreneurs, SMEs, and innovators. It is my absolute pleasure today to introduce you to Andrea Pacini from Ideas on Stage, and author of Confident Presenter. I'm Maxine Crow, your host, and I'm really happy for you to join us today. Andrea, it has been, I was going to say it's been a long time, but it's only a couple of weeks ago we finally managed to meet up. And, it's just lovely to see you. Lovely for you to be here.
Lovely to see you too, Maxine. Thanks for having me.
You are more than welcome. So, the way we do things, so we're just going to ask you to introduce yourself and your background, and then we'll get into some questions. And also, I want to hear the story about Confident Presenter as well, because I know we started writing the same time, and I always said you were going to be the first out of our cohort to produce a book, and I think you actually were.
Maybe not. I don't know if I was the first, but one of the first, I
One
think.
of.
Maybe not the first. Um, yes, sure. So I'm a presentation coach. I'm the head of Ideas on Stage UK. And Maxine, the reason why I'm so passionate about public speaking is because when I was a little kid growing up in Italy, I grew up in a family of very small business owners. My parents have always been running their own very small business together. They still do. And so as a kid, I saw their challenges because raising four kids, we were talking about kids before we went
Yeah.
live. So
Yeah.
raising four kids while trying to run a business is not easy. But I also saw in them, I saw their spark, their entrepreneurial mindset, their proactive approach to life. And so that's why I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, to run my own thing. Now, I don't know about you, Maxine, but for me, in reality, that remained a dream for a long time because before
Mm.
doing what I do now, I tried many things, starting many projects, all of them failed. But it was useful because in that process, what I realized was that there are so many great ideas that fail, not because of the ideas themselves,
Mm.
but just because of the way they are presented. And that's why, then, to cut it short, eventually I became a presentation coach. That's why
Mm.
my mission is to stop great ideas from failing just because of the way they are presented. And that's what we do when we work with our clients.
Yeah. That's absolutely amazing. So you've talked about what inspired you to become an entrepreneur, and you've actually talked about how you came up with the idea for the business as well. But can you just tell us a little bit about what were the initial challenges that you faced when starting Ideas on Stage?
There were, and there still are, many challenges. I think that running your own business is one of the, from a professional perspective, one of the hardest things you can do. And you know this, Maxine, with yours.
Mm.
So challenges around coming up with a, especially if I think about the very beginning. So you need to come up with a concept that resonates with the audience, and that's the first challenge. The other challenge, a very perhaps one of the biggest challenge, is building an audience. So you have a concept, you know what problem you want to solve, how you want to solve it, but then you need an audience because without an
Mm.
audience, nothing works. So that's a big challenge. And we've been trying, and we still do, a number of approaches for us to build and expand our audience. Then there's a challenge around creating and presenting an offer that again makes sense for your particular target audience, and there are specific challenges related to that. And then also making sales. you
Mm.
you have you have a concept, you have an audience, you have a good offer. Then you also need to be able to sell the thing that you do to your potential clients. So there are, if we want to go deeper, there are many specific things that can be considered and are definitely challenges. But these four concepts,
Mm.
these four ideas, I think are a good summary. Your challenges around your concept, the problem you solve, how you want to solve it, challenges around building an audience, creating an offer that resonates with the audience, and then making sales.
Mm. That's amazing, and I know that with you being on here, there are a lot of the audience that would really love to delve into some practicalities as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna just going to talk about some of the presentation nuances, if you like, that people experience if they're going to be speaking for the first time, if they have a pitch they want to present. Just tell us why presentations matter.
They matter because you can have the greatest idea in the world, but if you can't communicate it, it doesn't matter. So your idea, and when I say an idea, Maxine, it could be a product, a service for entrepreneurs, for small business owners. It could be an idea, a concept, a product, a service, and that may be the best thing in the world. But if you can't present it well, if you can't communicate it, it doesn't matter. I'll give you an example. Warren Buffett 2 years ago was giving a class to some students. I think it was at Columbia University in the US,
Mm,
and he said, right now, he said to the students, right now I'm ready, I will be willing to invest $100,000 on each of you for 10% of your future earnings. And then he added something. He said, actually, you can increase your value by 50% if you learn public speaking, which means that he said, I would be willing to invest $150,000 on each of
mm,
you for 10% of your future earnings if you learn public speaking. Now, he wanted to make a point, and his point was that if you want to succeed, and whatever that means for you, success will mean different things to different people. But if you want to grow your business, increase your influence and reputation, if you want to boost your career, if you want to make a bigger impact,
mm,
then the single greatest skill that will help you do all of these things is your ability to pitch, present, and communicate your ideas. And that's why this is important.
mm. That's some really great insight there. For our audience, can you just tell them what skills they would need to become a confident presenter?
There are three fundamental skills that we need to consider when we think about presentation skills, public speaking, communication in general. The first one, which is the most important one, is your ability to develop a compelling message. And that's the content of your presentations, of your communications in general. So your message. The second one is your ability to amplify your message effectively from a visual perspective. Now, for example, often in business, with business presentations, many people use slides, PowerPoint, or any other kind of presentation tool, but it could be a flip chart, a whiteboard. It doesn't have to be slides. But what's important is that we cover that aspect well. For example, when we think about PowerPoint, I often see the typical death by PowerPoint with lots of
Yeah.
text and bullet points. People can't read and listen at the same time. So that's another skill that we need to master. And then
Mm,
the third one is your delivery skills. So once you have a compelling message, it's not enough. You also need to be able to deliver your message in a way that's comfortable and convincing.
mm,
And examples of delivery skills are eye contact, gestures, body language, posture, the way you use your voice. So you see, what you need is skills around what you say, but also how you say it, and
mm.
also, if relevant, what you show when you say it. Maxine, to use an analogy, it's a bit like a movie. When you watch a movie has the screenplay, and that's the message of the movie, the
Yeah.
content of the movie. It also has actors, and that covers the delivery side of things.
Yeah.
And a movie also has often special effects, and that's the visual element. So message, visuals, and delivery. And if any of these three key elements is missing, you will not enjoy that movie. The
Mm.
same is true when we think about our presentations. If any of these three key areas are missing, message, visuals done well, and delivery, if any of these is missing, or if any of them are not are not covered effectively, then we will find it hard to reach our objective. So
Mm.
a presentation, Maxine, is so much more than just PowerPoint. It's so much more than just putting together some slides. A presentation is an opportunity for you to communicate your ideas and do it well so that you can achieve your objective, whatever that is, so that you can grow
Yeah.
your business, increase your influence, boost your reputation, boost your career, so that you can make a bigger impact.
Mm. So thank you, Andrea. That's really insightful. And I want to actually say that what I've done is we have for the audience with the little stream, and I'll put it on again later on, just some information around what we can do, what you can do to assess presentation skills in less than 3 minutes. There's the attending the next ideas on stage, and then also I really want to talk about your book as well. So I will put that back on again for the audience to capture a bit later on. So tell us about Confident Presenter, and what was the highlight of writing the book for you, and what are the key takeaways you would say for our audience?
The key takeaway is that if you want to become a more confident presenter, then the more we were talking about the key skills to have, the most important skills the most important skill to master is your ability to craft a captivating message, a
Mm.
message which is simple for the audience to understand, clear for them to follow, relevant to them and their needs and the context. That's the most important principle, and also original and enjoyable. So in the book, I go through the 5 key principles for powerful presentations. We have a method at Ideas on Stage. We call it presentation score, and
Mhm.
score stands for these 5 principles: simple, clear, original, related to the audience, and enjoyable. So I go deep on each of these principles with examples and case studies of how our clients have applied these principles, but it's a very high level for now, Maxine. What that
Yeah.
means is that simple means that the more you say during a presentation, the less they remember. So you need to keep it short, simple, and to the point. Clear, because your key messages should be obvious to everybody, including you as the presenter.
Mhm.
Original, because you want your presentations to stand out, to be a bit different, so that they'll pay more attention and remember it for longer.
Mm.
Related, because when you give a presentation, it's not your presentation, it's always the audience's presentation. And so you need to make sure that what you say is useful and relevant to them, to your audience. And then enjoyable. Well, of course, if your audience enjoys your presentations, again, they'll pay more attention, they'll remember more, and maybe they'll do what you want them to do. They'll take action. And that's why that's important. So, again, in the book, I go through these 5 principles applied to the context of developing a compelling message, which I think is the most important skill that we need to master if we want to become more confident presenters.
Mm. So tell me, is there going to be another book? Is there going to be a book number two?
You know what, Maxine? I've got this idea, which is just an idea for now, and I haven't shared it with anybody else, anyone else yet. So I'm going to do it here with
Okay.
you. And so at the moment, I'm reading a book which is fascinating. I don't know whether you know. It's called The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday.
No, I
It's a
don't know.
book. It's a book about the Stoic philosophy, which for me it's a great philosophy. I love it. It resonates with me a lot. It helps me live better. So nothing to do with presentations, public
Uh-huh.
speaking, and what they've done, what the author has done there. He's taken just one concept coming from the Stoic philosophy, just one concept per day, So it includes 365 pieces of wisdom and insight on that particular topic, which is the Stoic philosophy. So it's just you can
Mhm.
read one page per day. You can read the whole book in one go as you prefer, but it's an evergreen book that will
Mm.
always work. And so I have this idea of writing, yes, a next book, which will be something like the Daily Presenter, where every day there will be just a quick insight connected to the world of communication, presentations, and public speaking.
I
Just an
love
idea
that.
for now.
Well, we heard it here first. I love it. I absolutely love it. And also, I mean, there's so many people that are afraid to. They have ideas and they know what they want to say, but they're afraid to express it, or they don't know how. What would you say to people in the audience that have that, do you know, that initial kind of fear factor about speaking? What tips would you and advice would you give them to help manage that situation?
First of all, we need to realize that everybody feels that at different levels, but fear of public speaking is very common. Now, I'm a presentation coach, and I feel that fear and a bit of anxiety and nerves before any presentation all the time. So it's not because I'm a presentation coach. I give presentations all the time. We help with our colleagues, we help our clients do the same, but I feel the fear as well. Now, so that's one thing. By the way, Mark Twain apparently said, you never know with these quotes whether or not they actually said it, but it makes a point. Mark Twain is supposed to have said that there are only two types of speakers: those who get nervous and those who are liars. So we all feel something. So that's one thing to realize. It's
Yeah,
natural. Now, having said that, there are a few practical things we can do. Now, I'm going to give you just some because you mentioned like practical
yeah.
tips today. So I'll give you a few practical tips. Although I can tell you already that none of them will work unless we do one thing, and I'm going to explain what that one thing is as
Okay.
well. So, for example, always have some water with you. So I have my glass of water because when you have nerves, anxiety, fear, then often what that does is the consequence is that it creates a bit of a dry mouth. So if you want to avoid that, from time to time, you are presenting, you are having this conversation, you have a bit of water. Why not? We can have a bit of water that helps. Another thing is movement. When we have anxiety, nerves, that causes a lot of it creates a lot of energy in excess, in surplus, and we want to get some of the energy out. One way to do that is to move. So rather than waiting for your turn to speak or for the webinar to start, for example, being seated in desk in front of your laptop, stand up, have a walk. If you can have a walk outside, even better. So that's another thing. Breathing. Breathing is super powerful if you want to calm yourself down. So, for example, before any presentation, I do this. I breathe a few times. I breathe in through my nose and I count to 4, and I breathe out through my mouth and I count to 6. And I do that because when you breathe out, if that's longer than when you breathe in, that helps you relax. Another thing you can do is you can include a moment of interaction with the audience right from
Mhm.
the start. So if you include a moment of interaction with the audience, you can ask them a question, for example, that puts the focus away from you
Yeah.
and back to the audience. So you see, there are many things, many practical things we can do. However, as I said, Maxine, none of these will actually work unless you rehearse.
Hmm.
So the problem I see is that many people don't rehearse their presentations. And rehearsing means repeating your presentations out loud, not in your head, out loud from the very beginning to the very end without stopping, as if there is a real audience in front of you. And you want to do that several times until you've internalized your message. You don't have to memorize your presentations, but you need to internalize them. You need to own your content. And
Mhm.
only if you do that will you be able to, I wouldn't say overcome the nerves, because it's impossible to overcome the nerves, but to control them in a
Yeah.
much more positive way.
Yeah. So when you talked about rehearsing, thank you, Andrea. When you talk about rehearsing your content, and I've heard that people say rehearse or stand in front of a mirror and rehearse. Or does it matter where you rehearse a presentation to internalize it?
It does matter, and the reason why it does is because what great presenters do is they rehearse as much as possible. They try to rehearse in the real world, which means it doesn't have to be in front of a mirror, but it has to be in an environment, ideally, which is as close as possible to the actual situation, to the actual environment that you will have in the real presentation. Then it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be complicated. That means that, say, for example, that you are running a webinar, then what you want to do, you want to rehearse in the real world, which means that if you're using Zoom, for example, or any other conferencing tool, then launch the conferencing tool that you're going to use. Are you going to use some slides? Perfect. Open up your slides, connect the camera, just go through the presentation, repeat it out loud in conditions which are as close as possible to the conditions you will face in the real presentation. If, for example, you are planning to deliver your presentation while standing, even if it's online and you are at home, or maybe if it's an in person presentation, you will be standing, then you should rehearse while standing, not while being seated. That's what I mean by rehearsing in the real world.
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
you don't, in the real situation, then there will be different dynamics that you haven't considered, and that can be a bit of a challenge.
Hmm. Thank you. That's really helpful. I'm actually learning some things from you today, which is absolutely beautiful. Um, let's just talk about a bit of advice and wisdom from you now. So, what's the best piece of advice that you've received as an entrepreneur?
I've received, I was lucky enough to receive a lot of great pieces of advice. Perhaps the definitely one of the pieces of advice that is still with me, that resonated a lot with me, and that helped me change my approach to things, is something I've learned, Maxine, from Daniel Priestley. You
Hmm.
you you know him.
Yeah.
Once I remember, so I attended one of their business accelerators. The first time I've done something with them was 2018,
Oh,
and
yes.
he suggested that we created a brochure to be used during sales conversations with potential clients, a brochure that explained what we do, our services, our programs. And after weeks and weeks, or perhaps I should say months of tweaking and trying to make it perfect, at one point I was super happy, and so I posted in the Facebook group. We have this private community Facebook group with the other guys, and I said, my brochure, I was very happy with myself, with my progress. I said, my brochure is 99% done. And he responded with one comment, just one sentence. He said, 99% done is not done. And that helped me because I thought that I had done something, but he was right. I had done nothing.
Hmm.
99% done. If you have a brochure which is 99% done, you don't have a brochure.
Yeah.
And my tendency before this piece of advice was the typical perfectionist approach. I used to be a perfectionist. If something wasn't perfect, I would never I would never take it out to the market. I would never show it. Whereas now, if something is 80% done, 80% okay, then I'm going to use it. I'm going to publish it. And that applies to many things. It
Mm.
applies to a brochure, it applies to a webinar, it applies to a presentation. It applies to a new service, a new program that you've built for your target audience. It applies to everything. So perfection is the enemy of good. That's one of the pieces of advice that mostly resonated with me over the years.
Do you know that that's so true, and also the what there was the one about prolific, not prolific, not perfect was a good one, and I think also if you're not putting stuff out, how do you evolve it? How does it get tested? So there's some real great words of wisdom there. Thank you for sharing them. So that brings me on to the topic of the now is AI, and how what do you think and how do you feel AI is impacting on public speaking?
At the moment, for obvious reasons, I'm often asked this question, and on the one hand, yes, there is an impact, of course, and we need to pay attention to what's going on. But the fundamental thing is that I think that, and I'm going to explain why,
Yeah,
I think that AI and technology in general is not going to change public speaking forever, or at least it's not going to replace public speaking as a
yeah,
fundamental skill to have. Why? I'll give you an example. Jeff Bezos famously talks about the importance of focusing on the things that don't change. He says, everybody, lots of people always ask me, what do you think is going to change in the next 10 years? And he says, nobody ever asked me, what do you think is not going to change in the next 10 years? And he thinks that the second question is much more interesting because if you focus on the things that don't change, you will be successful. In the case of Amazon, for example, they know that 10 years from now, people will still want low prices, fast delivery, and a big selection. That's it. So if they focus on these three things that will never change, they will be successful. Now, in public speaking, Maxine, in communication, there are things that change and things that don't change. The things that change are tools and technology. So 50 years ago, we didn't have PowerPoint, for example. A few years ago, we didn't have Zoom. Now we are using StreamYard to do this.
yeah.
I guess a few years ago, we didn't have StreamYard. A few months ago, we didn't have ChatGPT and all the other AI tools. Now, these tools are great, useful, but they will change. That's inevitable. But what will never change are the fundamental principles of communication. Aristotle was the first one more than 2000 years ago who gave us the building blocks of effective communication, persuasion, influencing, and convincing others. And he didn't have access to any of these tools.
Mm,
And today's best communicators still follow those principles from more than 2000 years ago. So, for example, and then I'll close here, Maxine. In your case, let's say that 10 years from now, you give a presentation at a conference, and then somebody from the audience comes to you after your talk and they say, Maxine, there was a great presentation. I just wish that your message was not so simple for me to understand. That will never happen.
mm,
Or I just wish that your storyline was not so clear for me to follow and remember, or that your message was not so original and enjoyable. Or
mm,
Maxine, great talk. I just wish that your message was not so relevant to me and my needs. That will never happen. And it will
mm,
never happen because these are the fundamental principles of communication.
mm.
Now, don't get me wrong, of course, you do want to pay attention to what's going on with the AI and technology in general. I do it. I do use AI on a daily basis for myself with the clients because if we use it in a smart way, it can definitely help you to get your message across in a
Yeah,
more effective way. But what really makes a difference and what really differentiates and what will differentiate great presenters, confident presenters from average presenters is whether or not they follow and they master the fundamental principles of communication.
Mm. That's absolutely brilliant. I have got another question for you. We don't worry about the about the time, because some people might think, okay, well, now that we've come out of COVID and we've been online more so than face to face. So in-person presentations versus online presentations, what's your view?
My view is that on the one hand, the core principles that we need to consider still apply, whether it's in person or online. So, online or in person, you still want to have a compelling message. If you're using any kind of visual support, you still want to do that well. And you still need to deliver your message in a way that's comfortable and convincing. So, from at a high level, we don't have many differences. But then, if we go a little bit deeper, yes, there are some key differences, mainly from a delivery perspective. So, for example, online, one thing online is technology. So,
Mhm.
again, the impact of technology online is much more important than its impact in an in-person presentation. So, online, you do want to pay attention to your setup. So, things like having a good microphone, webcam, lighting, background, all these kind of things, they do make a
Mhm.
difference online. Another thing is the level of interaction with the audience, which is always important, whether it's in person or online. But I think we all agree that keeping the audience's attention high online is harder than doing it in person. So,
Mhm.
if, for example, in an in person presentation, you plan to interact with the audience every, say, 10 minutes or so, which is what people don't do that, but they should do that.
Mhm.
Presentations are not monologues, they should not be one way communication, they should be two ways. It should be a
Yeah.
presentation should feel like a conversation for the audience. In person, you want to create those moments of interaction every 10 minutes or so. Online, the 10-minute rule becomes the 3 to 5 minute rule. So every three to
Mhm.
five minutes, you want to interact with the audience. And then, final thing, from a delivery perspective, let's take eye contact, for example. Now, the
Yeah.
principle is the same. Whether you are in person or online, you want to make eye contact with people because it's one way for you to make a good connection with the audience. The way you do it is different. The way you make eye contact in person when you have a room of people in front of you is different from the way you make eye contact online. Online, what do we need to do? We need to look at the camera. That's where your audience is,
Mhm.
instead of looking at a screen, for example.
Mhm.
So, at a high level, we have the same principles, but the way we apply the principles sometimes does differ.
Mhm. Thank you, Andrea. That it's been some great insights from you, and it's been absolutely lovely to have you in the spotlight and learn more about ideas on stage, and more importantly, confident presenter. So, for the audience, I have posted the link to confident presenter on my LinkedIn. Andrea, how can everyone get in contact with you if they want to reach out and learn more?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maxine. Just a couple of things. Our website is ideasonstage.com. And for me, the only social media I actively use is LinkedIn. So for people, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And then maybe one thing you mentioned it at the very beginning, we
Mhm.
have a scorecard, the Confident Presenter Scorecard, which is a way for people to very quickly assess their current presentation skills against the 5 principles I cover in the book in less than 3 minutes. It's free. They
Mhm.
just need to answer a few questions. They'll get a score from 0 to 100%. The scorecard will tell them what their score means for them, and he also identifies opportunities for improvement. And the link is, again, ideasonstage.com forward
Mhm.
slash score, like when you score a goal. And that's
Yeah.
it.
That's amazing. I have got it. I've got it on the bottom there, so people can take note. But I will share it again afterwards. Everyone, this has been In the Spotlight with Andrea Pacini, Ideas on Stage and author of Confident Presenter. Thank you so much, Andrea. It's been a blast. I've really enjoyed this session with you today.
Likewise. Thank you very much, Maxine. All the best.
Thank you.